Hey everyone, welcome to the Chilling Hour, where the stories never let you sleep. My name's Tyler Briggs, and I'm 26 years old. I've always been a night owl, working late shifts, long drives, quiet highways. I've always found a kind of peace in the lonely hum of the road at night. But after what happened one cold autumn night in 2019, I can't drive past a gas station after dark without feeling that same chill crawl up my spine. I was driving from Flagstaff, Arizona, back home to Albuquerque, New Mexico, after visiting my parents. It was around 2 a.m., the desert highway nearly empty except for the occasional 18-wheeler roaring past. My gas tank was getting low, and I saw a flickering sign up ahead that said, Miller's Gas and Service, 2 miles. Now, if you've driven through Arizona, you know there are long stretches of nothing but sand, rocks, and the occasional scrub brush. That sign felt like a miracle at the time. I took the exit, my headlights catching the cracked asphalt of a service road that led to a tiny, beat-up gas station surrounded by desert. When I pulled in, the place looked ancient, like something out of a forgotten decade. The lights above the pumps buzzed and flickered, casting sickly yellow pools on the ground. A rusted old icebox leaned against the wall, and the sign above the store was missing letters. It read, M. Lair's Gas and Serve. No cars. No sound, except the wind and the faint hum of fluorescent bulbs. I almost thought it was closed until I saw movement inside, an old man behind the counter, standing perfectly still. I got out, stretching my legs, the desert air colder than I expected. As I grabbed the pump, I noticed something odd. The handle was sticky, like someone had spilled oil or blood on it. I wiped my hand on my jeans, grimacing. The pump screen was cracked, but when I inserted my card, it worked. That was the first sign something didn't make sense. This place looked abandoned, yet it was operational. As the tank filled, I glanced through the store window. The man inside was still watching me. He didn't move, didn't even blink. He had this pale, waxy face like candle wax melting down from his eyes. I decided I needed a coffee for the drive, so I went inside. The bell above the door didn't ring. It gave a dull, metallic clank instead, like it hadn't been used in years. The air inside was stale, and the fluorescent light flickered, making shadows jump on the walls. The man behind the counter finally spoke. His voice was gravelly, like he hadn't used it in decades. "Traveling late?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh. "Just heading back home. Needed some gas and caffeine." He nodded slowly. "You picked the wrong station for that." I half smiled, thinking he was joking. But then I noticed his eyes. They weren't looking at me. They were looking through me, like I was standing somewhere else. I moved toward the back to find the coffee pot, and that's when I saw the calendar behind the counter. It was from 1993. The pages were yellowed, curling at the corners. I looked around the shelves. They were stocked with brands I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Surge soda, Planters cheese balls, Zagnut bars, all covered in a fine layer of dust. Something wasn't right. Still, I was tired, so I poured myself a cup of coffee. The liquid came out thick and black, but the smell hit me hard. It wasn't coffee. It smelled like burned meat and gasoline. I gagged, setting the cup down fast. When I turned, the old man was suddenly standing right behind me. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. His breath smelled like rot. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the cup. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. He just pointed toward the glass door. Outside, I could see my car, only there was someone sitting inside it. At first, I thought maybe another traveler had pulled up, but there was no sound of another car, no headlights. The figure in my car wasn't moving. I turned back to the old man, but he was gone. Just gone. No door opening, no footsteps. The only sound was the buzzing light and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I rushed outside, scanning the lot. It was empty again, except for my car. The air was heavy, silent. When I got closer, the driver's seat was empty. Then I noticed something on the windshield. A handprint. Smudged, wet, and dark, like it had been made with grease or blood. That's when I should have left. I should have just jumped in and sped away. But I needed to know what the hell was going on. So I went back inside. The store looked different. The lights were dimmer, and the air was thicker, heavier, like being underwater. The shelves were overturned, dust swirling in the air, and the counter where the old man had stood was now empty. I called out, "Hello, sir?" From the back room came a noise, a dragging sound, something heavy moving across the floor. I don't know why, but I pushed open the door behind the counter. Inside was a small office, or maybe a storage area. The smell hit me first. Copper, rot, and gasoline. There was a flickering light bulb swinging from the ceiling, illuminating piles of junk, old tires, tools, and bodies. I froze. There were 3 bodies, bloated, discolored, sitting upright against the far wall. Each one wore a gas station uniform that said Miller's Gas. Their eyes were open, mouths slack, and each one looked like it had been there for years. Then I heard movement behind me. The old man was standing in the doorway again, but now his face was twisted, wrong. His skin sagged like it was melting, and one of his eyes hung lower than the other. "They don't leave," he rasped. "No one ever leaves." I bolted past him, slamming through the front door. I could hear footsteps behind me, slow, scraping ones, but I didn't dare look back. I jumped into my car, slammed the door, and turned the key. The engine sputtered once, twice, then started. I threw it into reverse, backing up so fast I nearly hit the gas pump. That's when I saw them. Not just the old man, but others. Figures standing at the edge of the gas station lights. Men, women, children, all gray, all motionless. Their faces were blank, their clothes burned or torn, like crash victims. They watched me as I sped out of that lot, every head turning in perfect sync as my headlights cut across them. I didn't stop driving until I hit the interstate again. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. When I looked in my rearview mirror, the gas station sign flickered once, twice, then went out completely. I didn't believe what I saw until I tried to report it. The next morning, I called the county sheriff's office in Coconino County. I told them everything, how I'd stopped at Miller's Gas, how I saw bodies, how an old man had threatened me. The deputy on the line went quiet for a long time. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "Son," he said, "Miller's Gas burned down in 1993. Been condemned ever since. Nobody works there." I told him that wasn't possible. I'd been there. I gave him the coordinates from my GPS. He promised to check it out. Later that evening, he called me back. "There's nothing there," he said. "Just a concrete foundation and a rusted sign. No pumps, no building, nothing." I didn't know what to say. I checked my car that night, looking for proof that I'd even been there. The handprint was still on the windshield. Faded, but there. I called my parents, told them everything. My dad thought I'd been overworked and imagined it. But I know what I saw. I know that smell, that sound, those eyes. For weeks after that night, I had nightmares. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, hearing that dragging sound again. Sometimes I'd dream about the gas station lights flickering back on in the desert. Then one morning, I found something in my backseat. A single receipt. It was yellowed and curled, with the Miller's Gas logo printed on top. The date said October 13th, 1993. The total was $14.66, the same amount I'd paid for gas that night, except the timestamp said 2:17 a.m., and printed in faint red letters at the bottom was a message I'd never seen on any receipt before. "Thank you for staying with us." I threw it away immediately. But when I checked my bank account later that day, I saw the charge, Miller's Gas and Service. I called my bank. They couldn't find the business in their system. The transaction had already been cleared. I tried to find the old station online, but there was barely anything. Just a few blurry photos and one local news article about a fire in 1993 that killed 4 people, including the owner, Frank Miller, and his family. They'd been asleep in the back when the place caught fire. The report said no one ever rebuilt. But the strange part? The fire was never ruled accidental. Investigators said it looked like someone had locked the family inside. And I swear, the old man I saw that night looked exactly like the photo of Frank Miller in the article. It's been 6 years since that night. I don't drive at night anymore, and I avoid back roads like the plague. But sometimes, when I'm traveling for work and I stop for gas, I catch that smell again, burned meat and gasoline. And sometimes, the pump screen flickers before it prints my receipt. A few months ago, I stopped at a modern station near Gallup, New Mexico. When I went inside to pay, the cashier handed me a receipt and smiled. "Computer's been acting weird tonight," she said. "It keeps printing the wrong location." I glanced at the paper. It said Miller's Gas and Service. Same logo, same slogan, same total, $14.66. I looked up at the cashier, and for a split second, just a blink, her eyes looked cloudy, waxy, like candle wax melting down her cheeks. I got back in my car, threw the receipt out the window, and drove straight home. I've never told this story to anyone until now because I know how it sounds. But that gas station exists, somehow, somewhere between worlds, still running its late-night service for lost travelers. So if you ever find yourself low on gas in the Arizona desert and see a flickering sign that says Miller's Gas and Service, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't look inside. Because once you do, they might not let you leave. Story the end.
Story number 2.
My name's Evan Miller, I'm 28 years old, and this happened to me 2 years ago in late October of 2023, somewhere along the empty stretch of Route 84, cutting through the heart of New Mexico. I swear, what I'm about to tell you is real. I wish it wasn't. I was driving from Austin, Texas to Flagstaff, Arizona, moving out there for a job. It was a long drive, about 12 hours, and I didn't plan it well. By the time I hit the New Mexico line, it was past midnight. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions. Black sky, no moon, just a thin silver line of stars that looked like scratches in glass. I was exhausted, running low on gas, and all I could think about was finding a place to refuel and maybe grab some coffee. My GPS kept flickering between no signal and a static map frozen mid-turn. Then, out of nowhere, a faint green glow appeared on the horizon, a gas station sign. It looked old, one of those retro signs from the 70s, the kind with the tall pole and peeling paint. It read, Hollow Creek Gas and Mart. I almost didn't stop, but my fuel gauge was deep in red, and I didn't have a choice. When I pulled up, there were no other cars in sight. The building looked ancient. The walls were faded yellow, the roof sagged, and one of the fluorescent lights buzzed so loud it pierced through the silence of the desert. The pumps were the old analog kind, the ones that clunk when you lift the nozzle. Inside, I could see faint light, so I decided to go in. The bell above the door gave off a dull ding, and the smell hit me immediately. Stale coffee, oil, and dust. Behind the counter was a man, maybe in his late 50s, thin, wearing a flannel shirt and a trucker cap with the words Route 84 stitched across it. "Evenin'?" he said with a dry voice, eyes not leaving the small TV playing static behind him. "Hey, just need to fill up," I said, pulling my wallet. He nodded slowly, then said, "Pump 2 should still work." His voice was strange, not mean, not friendly, just hollow, like he was forcing himself to sound normal. I stepped back outside, started pumping gas, and realized there was no sound, no wind, no crickets, just the faint hum of the buzzing light. Even my own breathing felt too loud. Halfway through filling, I looked up at the glass window. The man behind the counter was still there. Only now, he was staring directly at me, not blinking, just staring. I froze. Maybe he was just zoning out, but something about the way he stood, completely still, head tilted slightly, made my stomach twist. I finished filling up and went inside to pay. The bell dinged again, softer this time. The man hadn't moved. Pump 2? And I'll grab this coffee, I said, holding up a small cup. He didn't reply. His eyes shifted from me to something behind me. Slowly, I turned. There was a mirror on the far wall, one of those curved, convex ones used for security. And in that reflection, I saw something move past the gas pumps outside. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, maybe a trick of the light. But the reflection was clear, a figure, tall and thin, walking between the pumps. No flashlight, no vehicle, no reason to be there. "Hey, is someone else out there?" I asked the man. He didn't look away from the mirror. "Don't worry about him," he said quietly. I felt my pulse jump. "Who? What do you mean?" "He's just looking," he interrupted, still in that dead flat tone. "They all look for a while." I felt a chill run straight through my chest. "They?" He finally turned toward me, face expressionless. "You should get going. Road's long ahead." I didn't need more convincing. I left the cup on the counter, shoved some bills toward him, and turned for the door. But when I stepped outside, the air felt different. Thick, heavy. The desert night wasn't silent anymore. I could hear something, a faint dragging sound, like boots scraping against gravel. I scanned the pumps. Nothing. Just the distant hiss of wind starting to pick up. I walked fast to my car, my hand trembling as I reached for the door handle. Then I heard it. A whisper. Right behind me. "Evan?" I froze. My name. My name. I spun around, but no one was there. Just shadows stretching long and black under the flickering lights. I jumped into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and started the car. The engine stuttered once before roaring to life. I glanced up at the gas station. The man was standing in the doorway staring at me again. But behind him, in the flickering light, I could see something else. A dark figure, taller than him, standing just inside the shadows. The outline of a face, pale, stretched, watching me. I floored the gas and tore out of there. The tires screamed against the cracked asphalt, and I didn't look back until I was at least 2 miles down the road. When I finally glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw the lights from the gas station were off. Completely. Like it had never been open at all. I drove for another 20 minutes before I saw a small diner off the highway. It was a 24-hour place, the kind truckers stop at. I parked, went inside, still shaking, and sat at the counter. The waitress noticed right away. "You okay, hon?" she asked. "You look like you seen a ghost." I just stopped for gas," I said. "Back at Hollow Creek. Guy there was acting weird." Her face changed instantly. The color drained from her cheeks. "Where did you say?" "Hollow Creek Gas and Mart, maybe 10 miles east." She stared for a long second, then whispered, "That place burned down years ago." I laughed, a short, dry sound, because that couldn't be right. "No, I was just there. There was a guy." She cut me off, shaking her head. "Honey, you must have seen something else. Hollow Creek caught fire in 99. Whole family that ran it died inside. People say sometimes you still see the lights on." My mouth went dry. I pulled out my phone, checked the GPS. My last location pinged about 2 miles from where she said it was. When I looked at the map again, it showed nothing, just desert. No gas station listed at all. I sat there for a long time, trying to make sense of it. The waitress eventually brought me some coffee, said I could rest a while. But I couldn't stop thinking about the man's voice. They all look for a while. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time a truck's headlights passed by the diner windows, I jumped. When I finally left around dawn, the sun bleeding red over the horizon, I decided to drive back, just to prove to myself it had been real. Bad idea. I drove those 10 miles again. The GPS froze at the same spot. And then I saw it, the sign. Only, it wasn't glowing anymore. It was bent, rusted, half buried in sand. The station was there, or what was left of it. The building was blackened, burned to a shell. The roof had caved in, the pumps melted, and the old bell from the door hung twisted off its spring. But here's the thing that made my stomach drop. The pump I used? Pump 2? The handle was still hanging out, hose coiled loosely, like someone had just used it. And right there on the cracked asphalt was something wet and dark, fresh footprints, leading away from the pump, long, spaced apart, too long for a human stride. I turned off the engine, against all common sense, and stepped out. The wind was dead still again, the same suffocating silence as before. I followed the prints a few steps until they vanished near the side of the building. That's when I saw it. Carved into the soot-black wall, as if someone had scraped it with nails, were words, "We still look." That was it for me. I ran back to the car, didn't even look back, and drove until the radio crackled back to life with some old country station. I didn't stop again until I hit Flagstaff. For weeks, I had nightmares about that man's blank stare. The way he said, "They all look." I even tried to find any records online about Hollow Creek Gas and Mart. And I did. It was real. A small family-owned station, run by the Holloway family. Husband, wife, 2 kids. In October 1999, an electrical fault caused a gas explosion at night. The entire family burned to death. The father's body was found near the counter, standing, like he'd tried to escape but never made it. The article included a photo of the father. My heart nearly stopped. It was him, the man in the flannel, the trucker cap that said Route 84, the same one who sold me gas 20 years after he died. Since that night, weird things have happened. I've gotten phone calls in the middle of the night, static on the line, then faint whispers that sound like dragging boots on gravel. Sometimes when I'm driving late and I stop at a rest area, I'll look in the side mirror and swear I see someone standing by the pumps, just far enough away that I can't make out their face. I told myself it was trauma, exhaustion, paranoia. But a month ago, I got curious again, stupidly curious, and checked Google Street View for Route 84 near the old Hollow Creek site. And I swear to God, in one of the photos taken years after the fire, you can see it. A man, standing beside the pump, looking directly at the camera. Same flannel, same hat. Only now there's another figure next to him, darker, taller, and if you zoom in, you can barely see the outline of a pale, twisted grin. I don't use that road anymore. I don't even drive at night if I can help it. But sometimes, when I stop at a gas station and the fluorescent lights buzz too loud, I get that feeling, like someone's watching from just beyond the pumps. And in the static hum of the lights, I swear I can still hear that voice. They all look for a while. Story the end.
Story number 3.
My name is Daniel Harris. I'm 34 years old, and I swear to God, everything I'm about to tell you actually happened. I've tried to move on from it, tried to tell myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But every time I drive at night, every time I see a gas station with a flickering sign, I feel that same cold crawl up my spine. The same one I felt that night in 2015. It was early November, around 2 in the morning. I was driving from Flagstaff, Arizona to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I had just finished a late delivery shift for a company that transported machine parts across state lines. I remember the highway being dead quiet, no other cars for miles, just the hum of my old Ford truck and the black stretch of Route 66 disappearing into the desert. Around 2:30 a.m., I noticed my fuel gauge dipping dangerously close to empty. I cursed under my breath. I had planned to fill up before leaving Flagstaff, but the truck stop I usually went to was closed for renovation. I glanced at my GPS, but the signal was weak, flickering in and out, so I just kept driving, hoping I'd see a gas station soon. After what felt like forever, I spotted a sign on the right side of the road. Gas, food, open 24 hours. The metal sign was rusted and bullet-riddled, but the faded red letters gave me a little hope. I slowed down and pulled off onto a cracked, uneven road that led to a lonely-looking gas station surrounded by flat desert and silence. The place was lit by a single buzzing fluorescent light that barely cut through the darkness. The sign above the station said Pine Hollow Gas and Mart. When I pulled up next to one of the pumps, I noticed there was no one around. No cars, no attendants, not even a sound except for the wind blowing sand across the asphalt. The air felt colder than it should have been, like something had drained the warmth from the night. I stepped out of the truck, my boots crunching on gravel, and tried to swipe my card at the pump. The screen was cracked and it didn't respond. So I decided to go inside to pay. The door chimed when I walked in, though the sound was warped, almost metallic. The store looked old, like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. Faded posters of Coca-Cola girls lined the walls, and the shelves were half empty, covered in a thin film of dust. The air smelled stale, like old gasoline and mildew. But what struck me most was the silence. No radio, no hum of a cooler, no clerk greeting me, just dead quiet. I walked to the counter. "Hey," I called out. "Pump 2, need to fill up." Nothing. The counter was empty. There was an old register, a jar of candy, and a few crumpled receipts scattered around, but no one in sight. I tapped my fingers on the counter, feeling uneasy. Maybe they were in the back room or taking a smoke break. "Hello?" I tried again, louder this time. Still no answer. I leaned over the counter a little and noticed something weird. There was a small black and white TV screen showing security footage from the parking lot. I could see my truck sitting by the pump, but on the screen, there was someone standing behind it. I froze. I glanced out the window toward my truck. No one there. But when I looked back at the TV, the figure was still there, unmoving, standing just behind the tailgate. It looked like a man, tall and thin, wearing a dark coat. His face wasn't visible. It was just a shadow under a brimmed hat. I blinked hard, thinking maybe the tape was delayed or looping old footage. But then the figure's head turned, slowly, as if he knew I was watching. That's when the lights flickered. Every bulb in the place dimmed for half a second before buzzing back to life. The air felt heavier, thicker, like the walls themselves were closing in. My throat went dry. I called out again. My voice cracked, trembling this time. "Who's there?" From the back of the store, I heard a noise, a faint shuffle, followed by something dragging on the floor, like a heavy cloth being pulled. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but my legs didn't move. The sound came closer, slow and deliberate, scraping along the tile. I backed away from the counter. "I don't want any trouble," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Just need some gas and I'll be gone." No response, just that dragging sound. Then I saw it, a figure emerging from the shadows of the back aisle. It was a man, or at least he had the shape of one. His clothes were tattered, soaked in something dark that glistened under the fluorescent light. His face was wrong. His skin looked grayish, tight against his skull, and his eyes were sunk deep into dark sockets. He moved stiffly, each step echoing across the store. I stumbled backward, my hand fumbling for the door handle. But when I turned to look, the glass door was fogged up from the inside. My reflection stared back at me, but behind me, was that same dark figure I'd seen on the screen. He was closer now, just a few feet away, his head tilted to one side like he was studying me. I didn't think, I just bolted. I ran for the back hallway, hoping there was another exit. The lights flickered again, and for a second, everything went completely dark. When they came back on, I wasn't sure where I was. The hallway was longer than it should have been, the walls stained with something that looked like oil or blood. I could hear whispering now, faint but everywhere, like a dozen voices murmuring through the walls. "Don't leave? You're here now." I slammed my hands against a door at the end of the hall. It opened into what looked like a storage room, shelves of cleaning supplies, boxes of snacks, old cans of motor oil. The whispers were louder in here, circling me. I spun around, shining my phone flashlight across the room. The beam landed on something that made my stomach drop. There were photos pinned to the wall, hundreds of them, Polaroids, yellowed with age. Each one showed someone standing outside the gas station. Some looked like they were smiling, holding up gas cans or posing with their cars. But others showed people mid-scream, faces twisted in terror, like the photo had been snapped the second before something horrible happened. And then I saw one photo near the bottom that froze me completely. It was me. I was standing next to my truck, looking over my shoulder, the same angle, the same jacket I was wearing that night. It wasn't possible. My hands started to shake so bad I dropped my phone. The screen cracked when it hit the floor, and for a moment the room went black again. When I picked it up, the flashlight beam landed on the corner of the room. There was someone there. A man sitting in a chair, slumped forward, like he'd been there a long time. His skin was dried out, leathery, his jaw hanging slightly open. He wore a gas station uniform, and the name tag on his chest read Earl. I took a shaky step closer, and that's when his head snapped up. His eyes were milky white, and his mouth moved, though no sound came out. Then, all at once, every whisper in the room turned into a scream. My flashlight flickered, and I could see shapes in the corners. Shadows writhing, faces forming in the darkness. I ran for the door, but when I grabbed the handle, it burned my hand. It was hot, like it had been sitting in a fire. I didn't care. I yanked it open and sprinted back toward the main store. The lights above me burst one by one, glass raining down. When I reached the front door, it was open, wide open, and cold desert air rushed in. I didn't look back. I dove into my truck, jammed the key in the ignition, and hit the gas so hard the tires squealed. I didn't stop driving until I saw the glow of Albuquerque on the horizon. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. When I finally pulled into a brightly lit Shell station, I just sat there, staring at the fuel gauge, trying to calm my breathing. The clerk inside was a young guy, maybe 19. I told him what happened, hoping he'd say something like, "Oh yeah, that place? Been closed for years." Instead, he just looked confused and said, "Pine Hollow? Don't know that one. You sure you weren't dreaming, man?" I didn't argue. I just nodded and went to fill up. But the weirdest part came a few days later. I was scrolling through local news articles out of curiosity, and one headline caught my eye. Abandoned gas station burned down. Cause unknown. It was Pine Hollow Gas and Mart. According to the report, it had been abandoned since 1983 after a fire killed the owner, Earl Thompson, and 2 customers who were trapped inside. Locals said it was haunted, that people still saw lights flickering out there, even though the place was long gone. I nearly dropped my phone when I saw the photo attached to the article. It was the same place I'd been at, the same cracked sign, the same faded Coke posters. But the photo was decades old, and in the corner, barely visible through the window, there was a dark shape, a tall figure in a hat. After that night, I stopped driving long-haul routes. I couldn't handle the open road anymore. I'd see things in the rearview mirror, shapes, shadows, maybe just tricks of the light, but I couldn't risk it. Once, about a month later, I found something taped to my front door. A Polaroid photo. It showed my truck parked in front of my house, and behind it, standing just by the tailgate, was that same tall man in the coat. I moved the next week. I don't know what Pine Hollow really was. Maybe it's one of those thin places people talk about, where time doesn't work right and the dead don't stay buried. But I do know this. If you ever find yourself running low on gas late at night, and you see an old station out in the middle of nowhere with a flickering sign and no one around, keep driving. No matter how empty your tank is, no matter how tired you feel, don't stop. Because sometimes the station doesn't just want your money, it wants you. Story, the end.